Hi folks, thanks for joining me again in the studio. In my classes at the moment, what I'm doing is concentrating on studies of hands, and in particular hands that I photographed when we were out in India with International Justice Mission, the anti-slavery charity. If you'd like to know more about their work, visit igm.org.uk and you'll hear some of the stories, the heroic stories behind the hands of the survivors that I'm going to be drawing. Now, I've been really inspired by some of my students' work, and in particular the representational studies that some of you have produced. And I felt quite challenged by them actually. Representation or hyper-representation isn't something that I deal with very much. I tend to be much more expressive in my approach. But occasionally it's a good idea just to tighten things up and to see how good your observation can be. So I'm not going to produce a hyper-representational study. It's not going to be like a photograph, but I'm going to try and keep it quite tight. I'm going to limit myself to maybe just over an hour or so for the study. We'll see how we get on. It's quite a small one as well. I'm not used to working this small. While I'm doing it, I'm going to share with you a site size measuring technique that I use sometimes. Site size measuring is normally something you do if you've got a model in the room or if you're working from life, and you would arrange your canvas in such a way use a bit of paper, that it would be alongside the model, and you would just transfer the measurements across for, say, the top of the head or the chin or the eye level onto the surface, and that would give you the vertical coordinates of the head. It's a really useful and quick way of figuring out the proportions so that you don't have to do too much in the way of measuring. You can do the same with landscape, and you can do the same with still life. Any subject it works well with. If you're working with a photograph as well, and you don't want to go down the route of tracing or projecting or even gridding up, you can also use site size in a photograph, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. I just wanted to tell you as well what media I'm going to be using. So I've got these two pencils here. They're both by Conte, French company, and one is a charcoal, a soft, medium soft charcoal pencil. The other one is a Conte pastel pencil. In fact, no, this is Derwent pastel pencil. And I'll also be using two erasers, just a normal plastic eraser, and this one here, which is an electric eraser. Because I'm working so small, it's really useful to get into some of the details with this tiny little rubber. So, I've already set up the workstation here and put down just a very light background tone over the surface that I'm going to be working. So it's tiny, you can see that I'm going to be working. And this is the image that I'm working from, which is scaled exactly to fit the shape that I want. Now, as I said earlier about the site size measuring, what I'll do with this is try and ensure that I keep it in exactly the same place each time. And I'll transfer across some of these coordinates across, so I can take that across here and just mark roughly where that finger's going to be. I could mark where the thumb's going to be up here perhaps. You move down, mark these fingers as well. And once I've got a few of those in, I might just move that to the top or to the bottom, position it again so that it's just nicely in there, and transfer down these measurements. So now I can take this down vertically, drop it right down the page, and I know that if that's going to be the top of the finger, the outside edge of the finger is actually going to end up being in there in relation to that. So that'll be that edge there for the finger. This one here, if I was to take that down, would end up being in about here. And I can double check those as well, move things around and just check. So I'll spend just a little bit of time doing that, looking at the shapes, trying to get everything plotted in. And once I've got the basic big shapes in there, then I'll start blocking in the large areas of light and dark tones. Okay, we'll speed the video up so you don't have to sit and watch me for a couple of hours. Okay, folks. I think I'm going to leave it there. There are a few bits and pieces that the more observant among you might notice are not quite right. But for a representational study, when I'm not trying to be too photo-representational, it sums up and it communicates through the tones and the shapes and the form that I wanted to try and capture. As I say, it's not always the case that being as tight as this is a good thing to do, but it is a very good discipline just to occasionally try and tighten up and create a study that is as close to the original as you can. I've been working on it now for just exactly an hour and a half, according to my timer, and it would be interesting to see if you set yourself a time limit like that, just how much can you get done in that time? As I said before, if you need to know, or if you'd like to know more work about know more about the work of IGM, please get to their website on igm.org.uk. And if you'd like to know anything more about my classes or my art, you can visit my website, michaelsamson.co.uk. And thank you very much for joining me.